Bladetongue. Told of the Fourth Age. What vengeance thereafter did the tower exact, and of Gulathar's lament. When Balgalad had ended his tale and commended his soul to their prayers, the fellowship took their leave and began their descent. The way down was far more perilous than their climbing up, for the way was over a series of some 13 interior stone bridges, whereas the way up had much easier been through a narrow central pillar. A wind rose from the central shaft that made their torches waver. They pressed on, undaunted, for they were no longer even fearing things supernatural. Now this tower resembled the immensity of the world tree in the Eld stories, and its Tower of Babel appearance, that spiraling porch which was attached to the exterior of the walls, was visible to the viewer standing without. This, however, was not the way down, for it was sealed off, nor was there any inner spiraling stair and cantilevered ledge, but only the central core pillar stair that they had come up from. And within the hollow tower were built many sloping bridges spanning the great chasm and crisscross to serve as interior structural buttresses, but most of them were in poor repair and crumbling. Yet by root of these was the only way down, for the Hellspawn, in fear of the Bladetongue, had locked all other portals. So came they unto a crumbling bridge, the best of 3 that could be trusted, spanning that gulf so deep and dark that the eye could not find its bottom. Carefully must they cross, placing their lives on ancient stones. Then spake Phaethar, desirous of valor and foremost deeds. Let me first. If the way hold, ye may follow. If not, one only shall be forfeit. And Norgonce laid hand upon his shoulder, saying, No, Phaethar, she may be a treacherous span, even if she looks fair. We cannot afford to lose any of our number. Let Gulathar, an experienced spelunker. Phaethar smiled as one who fears little. Worry not, good father. Heaven guardeth the true. Gulathar will help. It looked to be an easy task. Often do perilous things look too easy when men are tired and worn out, no longer alert. Phaethar went forth upon the bridge that hung above the void. The wind moaned there as the voice of lost ages, and dust fell in slow sheets from the stones. Halfway across he halted, for the arch beneath him cracked, and the far wall groaned. So he inched forward nevertheless. Gulathar had given him a line, but the youth had not tied it well, nor was his usual athletic prowess accustomed to light treading while in a full suit of armor. Yet was he confident. Then stones beneath his feet shifted the more. The entire arch now gave way, falling like a giant into eternal slumber. He stumbled but leapt, barely catching himself on an edge. Yet he slipped down, clutching at the brink, and hung there by his fingers above the abyss. The rope fell away. "Hold fast, Phaethar!" cried Urius, springing to aid him and crawling nigh the bridge's brink. But he was prevented, even though the youth was but 2 arms' length away. But even as he spake more, bricks tumbled away into black silence, and Phaethar's grasp began to fail. The young man turned, calling out that no one take further risks. He could no longer pull the weight of his plate-mailed body. "Save the realm! Heed your oaths! Tell my mother!" He let go one hand to draw out the book from his satchel, and of course this meant gripping all his weight with but one arm, forsaking any hope of recovery. He straightway hurled the book of proof toward Norgonce, who snatched it as it flew through the dark air. So doing, in that moment, Phaethar's other hand loosed from the ledge, and he plummeted into the abyss, the deep cylindrical vault, vanishing in his gilded armor as a candle snuffed by night, for it seemed the wind took him. Thus was lost the youngest and the fairest of them all, whose hope was light to many hearts. Long they listened the echo of the falling stones, but no cry came after. At last Gulathar spake low. He might have cast the book away and lived, yet he would not. He chose the realm before his breath. Blessed be his courage. Then said Rohorst, his voice trembling, Yea, he hath done what few may, to die for others, and not for honor. So pass the best of men. Norgonce lifted his hand and softly spoke the Latin words of commendation, blessing the air where Phaethar had fallen. All bowed their heads, and far below, where no man could see, there came a glimmer as of golden light lifting into night, and they deemed it was his soul departing. Then forlorn they left to try another bridge. But Gulathar lingered still at the brink, peering long into the dark, and Urias quickly noticed his absence in the marching order, and returned to fetch him. Come, old one, he said. He is beyond our reach, and peril abideth here. Yet Gulathar answered, I swore in my oath that I would leave no Bladetongue broken in the dark. I must call to him once. Norgonce came softly behind and said, No, Gulathar, said he softly. No man can survive such a fall. Call not, friend, for the dead hear not. But evil things may. And you know better than anyone how calling out would alert the enemy to our position. Many barracks of foes we left unpurged below. We sorrow for Phaethar, and we will honor his memory later, not now while in dangers. If we would reap benefit from Phaethar's sacrifice, we must hasten to the goal ahead. Let his spirit go. He would command the same of thee. Live on and fight, not linger and die. Gulathar did not move. He continued to stare quietly into those long shadows. Norgonce and Urias departed. They could hear Gulathar sing faintly some forgotten song in the Valraffic language of elven strain, a lay of passing. After a while he rose and followed. He knew they were right, yet his eyes were heavy as though he had gazed too long upon the abyss, and those who walked behind him heard him sing faintly of the white shores and the ships of dawn. How the Fellowship departed from the Tower of Xenops. So it befell that, after much careful descending many a great sloping bridge, sometimes using ropes, they did reach the ground chambers. So their sorrow was a little spent, and made they ready to depart from that broken tower. For now the torches burned low, and a thin mist like sighing breath hung in every corridor. The walls themselves seemed weary, as though they had long endured the burden of wizardry. The moon still shone through the riven roof, and its beams lay like silver ashes upon the steps. No man spake for a while, for their hearts were heavy. The chill of these stones goes through me bones, whispered Urias. The wind answered him with a low moan in the hollow shaft above, like the last voice of Xenops himself. Norgonce turned once and looked upward, making the sign of the cross. May the Lord forgive this stonework of men's vanity, declared he softly. For knowledge buildeth a tower that reaches to heaven, but all the world passeth away, taking the tower with, and so its knowledge. They reached the ground floors and passed by the pile of slain Barlights and hobgoblins again, and Urias said nothing, but he took the banner of the conquering lamb from where it was planted, and bore it forth before them. Parry and Corjet followed, watching their steps, and Rohorst lingered to secure the locks that were not broke, sealing in any remnant hellspawn. Thus went they down the corridors, and saw the exit, with dawn's light only dimly brought forth. Then Urias commented, "A sad thing to have rounded out one's life in so dismal a place, no, but not forgetting him, we bring forth the banner and our haunting arms, marred by smoke and shadow, yet bright with the memory of all we have done herein." With that, Norgonce abruptly halted and raised his hand to check the others and hinder their advance. How could I have gone so mindless? Dread of this place overwhelmed my reason, being so obsessed to escape forthwith. Truly it was numbing my heart. Stay, brothers, we must search for our fallen Phaethar. We cannot leave his body in this place to rot and be forgotten, dinner for the rats. I will not stand for it. He will have Christian burial. Let all danger and every foe come, even death at the claws of many Barlights. But I will not leave without Phaethar. None dared oppose such a word, for even the pagans look after their dead. So spreading out, they searched the ground floor of the tower, but found not the body of the hero. Then Rohorst noticed something in the place where the Sigurwash flows out from the tower and descends as a cataract down the great hill upon which the tower rises. The famous ranger detected a scarf caught on a sharp rock, and he swore it was Phaethar's, which he would tie about his neck. It is his. I recognize it. The river has taken the dead. Phaethar's body must have floated down the river and has been washed outside, the scarf finally slipping off. His body must be in the pools at the bottom of the cliff, where the Sigurwash spills out her waters upon the plain. Let us leave now, and quickly go hence, and claim it before does any wandering bird or beast." So they exited at once, and looking back up, the tower stood vast against the pale sky of dawn, and the moon had long sunk behind it, as behind some fallen world. Carefully they climbed down the sheer cliff, using Gulathar's ropes. How the companions beheld the passing of Phaethar, and the division of his armor. Dawn was a pallid light yet in the east, neither day nor night, as the world waited to draw breath. Mist drifted low upon the ground, and the river Sigurwash spilled in torrent beside them, like a white serpent churning and rolling upon the stones below. And about the foam was a great pool encircling, deep and dark. They passed the pool and followed the river down a ways, for they had not yet espied the body of their beloved companion. They came to a place where the wind was still. Even the banner of the Lamb hung heavy and motionless in Urias's hand. Rohorst led the way by the sandy bank and the grasses and trees, as ever had he keen eyes for the movement of beasts and waters. Then after some ways he halted, raised his hand, and whispered, "See ye there, beyond the current? What shapes are those?" They looked, and upon the opposite shore, where the waters flowed gently, they beheld 3 veiled women in garments white as heavenly clouds, with diadems of silver threading upon their brows, kneeling beside a bloody figure that lay outstretched upon the sand. "By my soul," said Gulathar lowly, "it is he, the lordly fellow, our Phaethar. Now, ye men, keep yourselves in holy fear, and remain thou concealed. Watch these creatures, but do not show yourselves, lest you fall into the hands of the living God and be found wanting." Then was a great mystery. The song of beautiful lamenting was heard over the water, sung like strings, touched by the wind, and in a language unknown. And they soon did discern that it were from these 3 ladies came the harmony. And indeed it was Phaethar who lay there, for they could see across the waters the gleam of his golden armor, and they marveled how gently the remarkable women loosed it from his limbs, piece by piece, as a mother might undress a child for rest. No mortal speech passed among the Bladetongue as they watched, only the sound of the river and that song of unearthly muses, as if the celestial court sighed, but without sadness. Phaethar's eyes remained closed, and neither could any say in certainty that he was full dead, for it seemed that his limbs had not stiffened withal, as should be expected by this time. Now did those ladies fair lift up his arms and fit sleeves on, dressing him in a stately white tunic and robe, and with a golden cincture tied about his waist, a white stole with red fringe round his neck and torso. And behold, one of those, a luminous virgin, young and fair as spring, held aloft a wand of yew, and at her summoning the waters grew calm, obedient as hounds to the hand of their mistress. And the rolling vapours upon the river parted, and lo, from out them slowly appeared an ancient vessel, taking shape out of the formless mist, a grey skiff gliding serenely, wrought narrow and fair, its prow carved with lilies and small wings of bronze. Then the second lady, of matronly grace, stooped and took up Phaethar in her arms, where he lay upon the shore. The other two also helped to lift Phaethar's body and bore it aboard, and stretched him out as in funeral. The third, whose hair was as starlight upon frost, knelt beside him, and laid upon his breast a single lily, saying words none might hear, and straightway his countenance was serene, as one who sleepeth in faith. When all was ready, they stepped within, and took up the oars, but the water seemed to carry the vessel of itself, bearing them away into the deepening light downstream. A pale brightness shone about the boat, so that their forms seemed half transparent, like candles seen through glass. "But how can that be?" said Perry. "Speak not," said Norgonce softly. "I will explain later. He passeth into a midward realm. These are no phantoms of enchantment, but the handmaidens of mercy. Let us honor what we behold." So they knelt, every man of them, while the barge drifted onward until it vanished into the mist aglow with the sun. Perry did not long remain silent. "I think it some enchantment we witnessed, for Phaethar is surely dead, and must go to the judgment. It cannot be that my lord is taken by spirits to dwell in the Isles of the Blessed, as in the pagan myths. Nay, not without death first. Surely you, Lord Norgonce, a cleric learned in Holy Writ, know what Scripture says, for it is appointed unto men that they die once, and then comes the judgment. Indeed, this was some strange enchantment and illusion meant to confuse us. Search your heart, Perry. You know that what you saw was no illusion. God sees fit that certain righteous men be preserved until the last day, as in the case of Enoch and Elijah in the elder texts. Enoch did not die, as Scripture testifies, and Elijah was carried away in a chariot of fire. It is prophecy that in the time before the harvester, they shall return with firm purpose, and witness unto a world full corrupted, and shall glorify God in their dying thereafter. Until then, they sojourn in a realm unknown. So it is with certain great souls. Some await the final battle in a place beyond the horizon. Then silence fell, and only the whisper and trickles of the river remained. Presently, Rohorst stirred. "See, upon the shore, the armor has been laid aside for us," said he. "Certainly they were keen on our presence. They left it as a keepsake." And indeed upon the opposite bank lay all Phaethar's armor, the helm, the breastplate, the girdle and greaves, the glaives and the sun-like medallion, all bright as if newly forged. "Shall we cross?" asked Corjet, eager but uncertain. But Gulathar shook his head. "Too dangerous for mortal men. This stream is no common water. It divides the worlds. I have crossed over it twice in my wanderings, and it doth remember me, for I am elf-kin. Wait ye, I alone will go fetch the armor." So saying, he stepped down into the flow. The current rose about his knees, yet it went round him gently, and the light beams of the newly rising sun touched upon the waves, and turned to golden glimmer where he waded. He arrived at the far shore, and the others watched as he gathered up the armor piece by piece, placing them in his large sack. Then, turning about, he re-entered the flow, returning to the shore and his fellows. Then Norgonce, standing before the company, lifted his hands over the sack and declared, "Behold, my brethren, how the Lord will not allow the virtue of the just to perish with them. This armor was the robe of a saintly soul. Let it now be the relic armor of his companions, undying things not buried with the dead, but steadfast in those who remember." Then Norgonce bade them make a circle there beside the river, where the grass and moss was less wet, and the dew and the mist drifted not. The banner of the Lamb they set in the midst, and around it they poured out the pieces of Phaethar's golden plate mail, gleaming. Each man stood bare-headed and thoughtful. At last Norgonce said, "Brethren, this armor was the vessel of a pure heart. He that wore it did not fall sin or fear. You saw him give himself wholly to the cause of the realm. Now that we are deprived of the man, his spirit may be with us who must continue. So put on these tokens, not for vaunting, but for remembering. The same piece that you helped him strap on before. Take that, and yourself now put on, and may it be worn with the dint of him that blessed it." The arming of the Fellowship with the relics of Phaethar. So each piece they were to don in solemn order. The very harness was imbued with his virtue, haunting arms of a youth too soon departed, gleaming now in borrowed life upon his brethren. For a moment none stirred, but then Gulathar stepped forth and lifted from the ground the solar medallion that had hung about the young lord's neck. The amber within yet glowed softly, like a captured sunbeam lingering. This prize he wore happily, and it must not fade, said Gulathar. It should not be left forgotten in some tomb or treasure chest, but is meant for seeing when the paths are darkest. He placed the chain about his own neck, and the others saw the gleam kindle anew against his aged breast. Next Rohorst, the tracker of the plains, took up the greaves, which shone as the pale gold of morning. Kneeling, he bound them upon his shins, saying, "These legs and feet have wandered waste and the wild, and have carried me swiftly after the gazelles. Yet henceforth shall they tread where evil must be cut down, so let them wear this sacred protection." And when he rose, his stance was steadfast, as a tree rooted deep beside clear waters. Then Kajet, who had long wrestled with his own desires, stooped and took the helm, its wings splayed. He held it a moment in trembling hands, and then set it upon his brow. "Guard me, O mercy, from the fire within," he prayed. "Let this winged helm keep my thoughts on high, and on my salvation." And those who beheld him saw some peace steal over his stern countenance. So for a while the giant seemed transfigured. After him came Urios, whose war prowess had borne them through many perils. He took up both gauntlets, twin guards of right hand and left, and fitted them firmly. Their clasps rang out clearly. "Thulfin helped armor the hands of Phaethar, so he too is remembered by way of him," said he. "Both pray keep me from too hastily making war, as is done for vanity. These hands smite only the wicked." Then Perilothran beside him knelt and took up the belt and girdle, binding it fast about his waist. The gold buckle and bossed leather shone fitly with his roguish habit, but his face was grave. "Once I sought gold for the belly's sake," he murmured, "but this gilded buckle bindeth me to better cause." He straightened, and for once offered no jest. Last of all, Norgonce approached the cuirass, the breastplate wrought with golden vines and leaves. Long he gazed upon it, and all men there were silent, for his face was pale with awe. At length he did lift it in both hands and set it upon himself, and the others fastened the thongs with careful reverence. "This was his heart's armor," said he softly, "and so shall it be mine, though I be unworthy. Yet I know that charity covereth many sins, and will cover mine, for it is the greatest of defenses." And when it was fastened, he drew his hand across the metal, and it shone as though an unseen sun had broken through. So stood they, each in their portion of the golden panoply. Then Norgonce went and took up the banner of the Lamb, and the morning breeze caught it. The white field rippled where dew clung, and the red cross blazed against the blue sky. "For us he is not lost," said Norgonce. "Rather are we with him now in our deeds." And so, turning from the river, they passed beneath the boughs toward the waking world. The light of a sunrise under grey clouds, fringed with crimson, was glancing from the armor. They followed the stream's bend, where long willows wept above the reeds, and alders bled red sap into the waters. And they turned again from that path, and set forth once more toward the sea, to find the road. How they returned to Ironport, and of what transpired for their recovery. Another path wound upward through the whispering reeds and broken stones. Beyond there, the ash trees lifted pale arms toward the sky, and poplars caught the morning breeze. None spake, only the breeze made a sound, cool and cheerful. As they went along the way that leads to Ironport, they hoped for the familiar mast of the Alembrest rising above the roofs, but the boat had not returned. When the sun had fully lifted its red rim from the sea, the Bladetongue came again unto Ironport, wearied and torn from their travail. The streets were yet half empty, save for a few fishmongers calling at the wharf and dogs nosing at refuse. The smell of brine mingled with old smoke, and the morning wind carried a cry of gulls above the tide. So they came at last to the tavern of the Growling Dog, their first refuge before the Accursed Tower. The sign creaked in the wind, and the door, weather-swollen, gave a groan as they entered. The innkeeper, one Darnock, looked up from his sweeping and started back in fright, seeing the bloody band enter. "God's mercy! What have you men been doing?" he cried. "You look as though ye had slept in a charnel. Blood, soot, and ruin from head to heel. Out of my house, scalawags, before ye bring pestilence upon it." Then Gulathar went forward, his small frame casting great shadow across the room. His hair hung loose, and his eyes were hollow as burnt coals. "Peace, landlord," said he, and his voice was very low. "Thou rememberest me surely from a few days past, and you know well about who I am, and which my perilous race. We have been after doing terrible things, beyond your ken, which touch rulers and those highly placed. What thou hast seen this morning, forget. Speak of it not in market, nor in mirth, nor in confession. Now do as we say, and lock your doors till evening, for you will be rewarded double. And when we are in better repair, then you may serve your other customers happily. And if the tale of our deeds travel beyond these walls, I will return to thee by nightfall on Friday. Yea, though thy door be barred, and thou shalt learn how Valraphs fix a wagging tongue." At this the colour drained from Darnok's face. His broom fell clattering, and he stooped in silence to retrieve it. Then, muttering about the state of the floors, he turned back to his cleaning, and dared not meet their eyes again. The company took their seats by the hearth, where the embers still glowed from the night's fire. They called for food, hot broth, black bread, and ale, and sat mending their wounds as best they could. The tavern soon filled with the smell of boiled herbs and fired iron, and for an hour none spoke. Only the sound of Urias whetting his blade, and Kajet softly humming broke the hush. After a little while, the innkeeper announced that a physician was come. So he unlocked the door, and two strangers entered. The first was a tall man of lean aspect, wrapped in a dark robe of foreign weave. His companion was a younger woman carrying a small satchel bound in silk. Their manner was calm, yet watchful. Seeing the Bladetongues, the man bowed slightly and said, "Peace upon you, lords of the quest. A certain person of Yerbath, city upon the splashing sea, one whose name I am not permitted to utter, bade me come hither to Ironport, knowing of your peril, commanding me to offer aid. I am a physician, the court, trained in Yachesh of the East, where men still hold the advanced art of medicine in reverence. This is my assistant, Asha. If it please you, we would tend to your wounds at no cost, for your anonymous patron has already interceded." Norgonce rose and returned the bow, perceiving the tokens of his craft. "Welcome, good sir," quoth he. "We have need of thy skill. See how these men bleed for the realm." And Norgonce marvelled over which of his Amoric knights was so generous as to help him thus, accused as a traitor as he was. He could not guess it, as only the Duchess could give leave for the court physician to be sent, and she seemed unconcerned. So the physician set to work, opening his sizable carrying case, in which were arranged many instruments and knives and towels, bandages and vials, herbs and flower petals, and washing their hurts with strong spirits, and he bound them with linen steeped in sweet oils. His touch was deft, and his words few. In the quiet, he sang under his breath a low chant in the tongue of Yachesh, and some said afterward that the pain fled at the sound. And during these hours Norgonce and Gulathar perused the Book of Proof, puzzling together over its symbols and languages, its lore and histories. And when they came to the sections which they suspected to be writ by Prince Sinistox, they noticed areas of texts which were oddly arranged, and which seemed to have missing sentences. So Norgonce held it up to the hearth and fire, to see what could be lit up by transparent illumination, but yet nothing was seen. "Nay, my lord," said Gulathar, "such evil is too hidden for mere natural fire to expose it. Nor would even magical fire do what is necessary. Instead, use the gift by the Almighty given, fire rendered supernatural by his blessing, which can be done by your word." And so Norgonce took the candles that were there, made of pure beeswax, and he blessed them according to the Amoric formula in the old Roman tongue. Then he lit them and blessed the fire on them using the words from the Easter chant. And when they held the candles over the pages in question, letters and unholy symbols formed on the page, red as blood. And Gulathar could read the fell tongue well enough, for they proved the sinister pact of hell made by the prince with the legions of the accursed dead, and with War-Kunda Baal crown, Barrow king of the Atalur. Indeed, witchcraft of the most dreadful sort had been used in the forging this devil's alliance, and there would be a reckoning. When evening drew nigh and house candles were lit, the company felt the heaviness of sleep upon them. The physician counselled rest, and they obeyed, except Perry. The halfling felt new stirrings within, and he sat and wrote down all he could recall of what transpired in the raid upon the tower, and he did it with rhyme and rhythm, fashioning a heroic lay. And when the regulars and the sailors came in the evening for their ale, so came also the local minstrel. And then did Perry approach him and present his work, indicating that it were all true that he wrote, and pointing to the table of the bandaged Bladetongues. So did the minstrel rejoice, and even paid Perry a coin for his work, so that this song might be heard by visitors sojourning in Ironport, as there always arose questions from strangers about that famous tower. Yet it was not befitting, nor bode well and wise, the thing that Pori did, for enemy agents yet lurked and soon heard all that was published by the minstrels singing, and in turn they brought word of it to a certain fallen prince. Before dawn, Norgonce found the physician sitting wakeful by the window, gazing eastward toward the sea. "You keep strange vigils, friend," said the priest. The man sighed. "I have seen worrisome things, father," he answered, "and I must return to the court at once. Before I came away from Yerbath, there was tumult in the streets, armed men of noble rank causing great disorder, and whispers of rebellion against the High Council. The nobles are uneasy. The cheerfulness is gone from town. I fear the realm is darkened by the same spirit that once shadowed Ironport." At this word, Norgonce was troubled, for it seemed to them that the shadow of the tower would follow them. On the morrow they paid their reckoning and made ready their departure. 2 wagons they found for hire, laden with supplies, and so, after giving thanks for their preservation, the Bladetongue departed Ironport, journeying by the coast road of Cargiwall toward Yerbath, the physician and his silent assistant travelling in their train. So they set forth upon the long road south along the shore. Behind them faded away the black tower, silent beneath its shroud of mist, being mostly cleansed of evil. The road to Yerbath was now the labor required. 2 dark ewes were standing sentinel as they left the territory, marking the border between the dark world they had harrowed and the one they must yet reform. Farmers, leading their harvest wagons into town, passed by them in the grey light and crossed themselves and whispered, "There go the raiders of the tower, war ghosts of Yerbath." For none who beheld the faces of the Bladetongue that morning ever forgot the look of the only men who had ever broke into that tower and returned. For many miles the road clung to the shore. On one side the cliffs rose steep and scarred, and on the other the sea beat its foam against the rocks. The company rode in silence, each lost in his own thoughts. Only the physician's cloak fluttered in the wind, like the wing of a black bird. Toward noon they came upon a ruined shrine set upon a bluff. The roof had fallen long ago, but the altar still stood, and on it a single candle burned, though no hand was near to tend it. Norgonce knelt and signed the cross. "The Lord keeps watch even in desolation," said he. But Urius muttered that it might be one of the old gods seeking remembrance. Rohorst bent close and saw that the flame gave no heat, so they moved on without further speech. That night they camped by the dunes, and the physician sat apart, gazing upon the waves. Norgonce came to him and asked quietly, "What is it thou seest, friend?" "Signs," the man replied. "In my country we are taught to read the sea as others read the heavens. These waters are troubled. Look there." And Norgonce looked, and far out upon the darkling tide he beheld a ship aflame, drifting without mast or sail. The fire burned low and steady, as though it fed on nothing of this world. None of them spoke until it vanished into the horizon, and Gulathar said hoarsely, "An omen. The realm is burning, and we ride toward the fire." At dawn they rose again and went on, passing villages whose people would not meet their eyes. Word had gone before them, somehow, that Ironport had sent forth a haunted company. Even the dogs slunk from their path. On the third day, when they reached the borderlands of Cargiwall, the physician told them more of what he had heard. "In Yerbath," he said, "there are murmurs of a gathering. Knights once loyal, now divided by strange quarrels. Men speak of a new order rising in secret, and of sorcery in high places. The regent has sent spies to the coast, but none return. The king's household itself is fearful. The people whisper that an ancient power stirs again beneath the streets, like a tide seeking a forgotten shore." "Then must we hasten," said Norgonce, "for Yerbath is the heart of the realm, and if its pulse faileth, all the realm shall flounder." So they pressed on, though their beasts faltered and the winds grew fierce from the north. In the evenings they walked apart, staring at the waves. Each felt that something vast and unseen was moving upon the deep, as if the death of Phaethar had not ended the tale, but only begun it. Part 5. Of how Prince Sinistox learned of the expedition to the tower, and of his wrath when the book was missing. When certain days were past, Prince Sinistox returned unto the Duchess's court, puffed up with his dark plans, for he had sent a strong company of men-at-arms sailing to Ironport, requiring them to retrieve the Book of Proof, granting the answer to the Sphinx riddle thereby. And they had now returned. And he assured the court that within but a day the matter would be resolved. Yet when he came to his own lodging, tidings awaited him that struck his heart like cold iron. For his knight announced that they had just returned from Ironport, and pale and trembling, he knelt down before him. "My lord, we entered the tower, and saw all but a handful of the Barlight Guard slain, the Sphinx lifeless, and the Chamberlain of Xenops gone." The tower was broken and rifled by unknown hands. The book that ye commanded us to fetch in surety is gone. Neither lock nor ward remain unforced. The place is desolate and filled with holy signs." Then the prince's visage darkened. He smote the table with his ringed hand, so that the cup before him spilled, and he cried, "Gone, sayest thou? Has a ghost stolen my vengeance? Or some wandering fool took what was not meant for mortal hands?" The messenger durst not answer, for Sinistox's eyes were like coals under wind. At length he said only, "Men speak of a small fellowship that hath gone thither by night, seeking treasure. One was a priest in grey, full-bearded, tall and grand. They called themselves the Bladetongue." Then Sinistox rose, pacing to and fro as a lion newly roused. "So, the dog hunts back toward the fox's lair. Let him dig deep, I will smoke him out, for surely he has now that book, but if he presents it at court rather than I, the truth will seem against me." Straightway he called his captain, Sir Corbel of the Black Glaive, and said, "Take thy band of loyal cavaliers, go forth by secret ways, by forest and fen, till ye overtake those wanderers that creep along the sea, looters of the tower of Xenops. Bring me the book unharmed. If they yield, bind them. If is found the priest and his henchmen, and they resist, slay all but spare him. Him bring living, that I may show the world his guilt." Sir Corbel bowed low, his mail creaking, for he was a man feared in every shire, servant to hierarchies infernal, and darker powers of law inverted. That night he rode forth with his band, their horses hooded, their arms blacked against the moon. Then Sinistox stood alone in his chamber. Through the lattice came the noise of the wind upon the banners, and he looked out towards the east, where the stars burned faint over the sea. In the dim mirror before him, he saw his own face, twice reflected, and it seemed that one image smiled, while the other frowned. "If heaven shield him," he whispered, "then shall hell aid me." And so he turned from the light and descended to the vault below his palace, where the lamps were red, and the air stank of iron and salt, and there he communed with what none dare name. Thus was the pursuit begun, and from that hour the doom of many was sealed, for wherever the Bladetongue went, the pursuant knights were not far behind, as shadow follows flame. Of the Pursuit of the Bladetongue, by the Grim Cavaliers of Sir Corbel. Now, while the fellowship of the Bladetongue fared by covert paths had made good distance from the tower of Xenops, Prince Sinistox's horsemen were already abroad, moving like shades between the marsh and the moon. The peasants of the coast saw them pass at night and crossed themselves, for their horses made not a healthy sound upon the flint, and the banners they bore were a dismal and brownish grey as the stones of the tower. In the dawn a fisherman, early at his nets, found a man lying dead upon the shingle, one of the king's scouts, his throat cut clean, his blood washed into the tide. Near him were the prints of hooves, deep marked and circling, as of men that had waited long in silence. And this news ran through the hamlets like a winter wind. But the Bladetongue knew not that such peril dogged their steps. 2 wagons they had hired, drawn by weary mules, and their gear was stowed thereon, their blades, their relics, and the armor of Phaethar newly divided among them. The physician and his silent assistant followed behind, mounted upon small horses. They had gone inland by the causeway through the reeds, seeking the high ground before turning seaward again. The mists lay thick, and the salt breath of the fen clung about their cloaks. Once Perry Lothran, going ahead with his keen eyes, halted and called softly, "Hither, my friends! See ye these tracks? Shod hooves, 1 day at most, and pressed as by heavy horse, they follow our own course." Then Norgonce stooped, touching the wet earth. "The evil prince's hand is in this. He hath loosed his wolves of war upon us." Urius laughed low, his teeth flashing white. "Let him send all the wolves he hath. I have fell greater beasts with smaller blades." But Rohorst answered him, "Boast not, my brother. Wolves may harry the lion while he sleeps, but a pack of hyenas may tear him to death. Keep thy eyes open by night." So they marched on warily, and the marsh gave way to broken dunes. Behind them, faint in the westering light, the cavalry of Sinistox drew near, grim figures in iron mail, their captain Corbel ever before them, his helm wrought like the skull of a crow. That night, the Bladetongue camped by a ruinous watchtower upon the cliff. The sea roared far below, and the wind moaned through the stones. Norgonce, watching alone, saw lights moving far down the coast, red sparks that flitted and vanished. He woke Rohorst and pointed seaward. "Fires upon the strand," quoth he. "Aye," said Rohorst, "and not fishermen's fires. They move too swift. They are beacon signals. The hunt is afoot. Let us put out our lanterns, lest we shine to them like moths in the dark." So they sat in darkness, each man hand on hilt, hearing only the crash of the surf and the far cry of owls. Yet none spoke of turning back. And before the moon was high, Perry Lothran crept forth and returned with tidings. The hoofmarks were fresh upon the road they had taken, and the enemy cavalry but half a league behind. Norgonce lifted his mace and said quietly, "Then God be our fortress, for walls we have none." And the halfling answered with grim humor, "And I my sling, for stones are plenty." So the fellowship pressed on through the night toward Ternopil and Yerbath beyond, their hearts steadfast though doom rode behind. And ever between them and the sea went the press of those grim horsemen, like judgment deferred. They did still evade the skilful cavaliers, by passing them at night, inland a ways. But the ruse was detected. The mounted contingent came about, and pursued the Bladetongue southward along the coast. Of how Norgonce spake to the sea rovers of Othgog, and how there was strife upon the shore of Cargiwall. As the fellowship of the Bladetongue had borne with them the book of proof, they turned along the south coast of Cargiwall, making by lonely tracks through the salt meadows and dunes. The sea lay ever at their left hand, grey and unquiet, and upon its breast they saw sails like tattered ghosts. For there haunted that shore the rovers of Othgog, pirates and freebooters that took tribute of every port and left none unscathed. Now one morning, as they came down to a low bay, Norgonce beheld a band of those rovers, 40 or more, drawn up about a wrecked shallop, dividing their spoil. These were the same whom the captain of the Alumbrest had warned about. They were fierce men, their beards stiff with salt, and their cloaks stitched with the hides of sea beasts. Urius and Caiet would have set upon them straightway, but Norgonce held up his hand and spoke. "It is not our duty to arrest these men, nor are we well ready to do so, being weary of battle. Let us go easy till we have spoken with them, for we are being trailed by our enemies who will soon overtake us, and it would be best if these men let us pass by in peace. Or perhaps they have something good in them. They doubtless be sons of perdition, but we may at least give them one chance to heaven." Then, leaning on his mace as upon a staff, he went forward alone across the sand. The sea wind caught his cloak, and the morning sun made a pale nimbus about his shaven head. The pirates watched, muttering, for never had they seen a priest walk unarmed into their midst. When he came among them, they went agape and were stunned. He lifted his voice, and it carried over the roar of the surf. "Men of the sea, be not afeard. The judgment is not yet. Long have ye lived by the sword and the hook, reaping spoil, but sowing damnation. Yet I say unto you, mercy is not spent, if ye will repent and turn your hands from thievery. A great rebellion now boils against the rightful king, and I say unto you, better to fight for the crown of heaven than for the coin of hell. Aid us, and the Lord shall forget your former crimes, as will the king, I vouchsafe, as his sway extends even to Cargiwall." Then there was great laughter among the rovers, and one, a tall man with scar down his cheek, cried out, "And if we refuse thy sermon, holy man, wilt thou hurl a psalm at us?" But another, older and greyer, said quietly, "Peace, Barlock. I have heard of this priest. He is chaplain to the Ulthuran Knights. They call him Norgonce, the Unbroken, who stood against the Lich of Hyrcanth. Mayhap there is worth in his words." So Norgonce, seeing that the hearts of some were moved, pressed his cause more fervently, speaking of justice and repentance, of the wages of sin, and of the crown that fadeth not away. And at last the old rover bowed his head and said, "If the Lord will have us, then he must take us as we are, for we know not better. Pray, give us shrive, priest, and then show us thy enemy, and we will spill our blood for thy cause, better yet, their blood." Thus did heaven work strangely upon the sea dogs of Othgog. He heard their sins, and gave each absolution, and as penance holy crusade. They broke their black pennons, and set up a white cross fashioned from an oar, and swore fealty to Norgonce for that one venture. But even as they spoke, a horn sounded upon the cliff above. Over of the dunes came Sir Corbel of the Black Hand, with his cavalry of Sinistocks, black-armored and swift as hawks stooping. "Ready, all men!" cried Rohorst. "The fell power is upon us!" The pirates, seeing their old master's heraldry, gave a great shout of rage, for once they had served that evil prince and been betrayed. Now they took up their bows and axes with a sterner will. The Bladetongue drew into line beside them, a ragged company of saints and sinners alike, and there began a fierce battle on the sands. The dark knights charged, their horses plunging in the surf. Khajet met the first with his war mallet, shattering both man and steed in one blow. Furious bounded like a panther, dragging a knight from the saddle and driving steel through his gorget. Rohorst cast his twin spears, each finding a mark. Then Norgonce lifted Mithrohan high, and the head of the mace shone like a small sun. "By faith we conquer," he cried, but the tide seemed to turn against him. The pirates, emboldened, surged forward, chanting a rude hymn they had learned but that morning, and drove the enemy horse back toward the cliff. Sir Corbel himself came down to meet them, his helm shaped like a crow's skull, his eyes burning red through the visor slit. He would have smote down Norgonce, but their weapons clashed with a sound like thunder. 3 times they parried, and the priest's arm numbed. But on the 4th stroke, Mithrohan caught Corbel upon the brow and smashed his helm as a horse crushes an apple with his hoof. Then the captain fell to his knees, his blood dark upon the sand, and the remnant cavalry, seeing their leader slain, broke and fled into the hills. So was the field won, though dearly bought. Many of the pirates lay dead, but those that lived knelt upon the shore, and Norgonce gave them blessing, washing their hands in the salt tide, and saying, "Ye have done this day what kings failed to do. Ye have struck down a greater sin than thine own." And so the Bladetongue buried the fallen in the sand, marking the graves with driftwood crosses. The wind blew over them, and the surf sang, as though the sea itself kept the dirge of their repentance. The Lament of Norgonce. When the cries had ceased and the sea wind bore only the hiss of retreating foam, an hour passed, and Norgonce strode among the bodies of the slain. The tide spilled round their feet, as though to wash away all record of their striving. There lay youth and age together, knights all twisted in rent mail, pirates whose coarse laughter was stilled, and nameless mariners whom none would bury. He stood long, leaning upon his mace, and at last he spake. "O bitter harvest of the sons of men! Lo, here is the true fruit of our courage, silence and salt. These were the strong and valiant. And now the gulls contend for their eyes. What victory is this, that the sand drinketh the blood of both righteous and unrighteous alike? Nay, the sea hath seen 1,000 such days, and shall forget us as it forgot the men of Troy. God alone remembereth. He knelt then, and his voice was low but fierce. I have blessed the sword, and preached of holy battle. Yet see now what our righteousness hath wrought, a field of orphans, a city of widows, my own hand which offers the holy bread now stained with violence. Surely, Lord, if thou desirest sacrifice, there is no end to the altars we have made thee of our brethren's bodies. Forgive us, for we know not what we do. Rohorst came and laid a hand upon his shoulder. Peace, father, said he softly. It is the way of things, the wide world ever in turmoil. But Norgonce answered, Aye, it be the way of the world, and that is why the world must end, Rohorst, and be born again. Then he raised the banner of the conquering lamb and planted it in the sand above the tide mark. And for a moment the wind filled it so that it streamed red and white against the dawn. And all the company knelt, weary and sore, while the priest chanted the psalm of the dead, and the sea seemed to answer in long, sorrowful surges. Then Norgonce spoke. We march. The hand of heaven hath shown its humor in strange fashion. Let us not doubt it now. And they turned southward again, toward Yerbath, and the reckoning that awaited them. They passed by the great city Ternopil of the brazen domes. By the third day, the city of Yerbath loomed ahead, its walls dark against the dawning sky. From the third book of the Annals of Yerbath, concerning the accusal against Norgonce, the cleric and the coming of the Bladetongue. In that year after the Feast of the Seven Winds, when yet the realm was at peace outwardly but inwardly troubled with faction, Prince Sinistox laid grievous accusation against Norgonce, priest of the high altar, charging him with treason before the Grand Duchess and secret league with unknown rebels. Thereat many were astonished, for Norgonce was held in high reverence, a man of the cloth, and no lover of sedition. Yet the prince's words carried great weight, and the council resolved that Norgonce should be kept under restraint until the proof were brought. But Norgonce, falling to prayer that very night in his cell, sought light of the Lord, and it is written that a voice came to him, whether angel or inward stirring of the soul, saying, Seek thou the book of thy damnation, and in it thou shalt find thy redemption. So, when he was loosed upon surety till the prince's return, he took the road not toward sanctuary, but toward peril, joining himself to certain adventuring men called the Bladetongue, whose purpose was to pierce the old tower of the wizard Xenops and recover lost relics. He declared that he went by divine prompting, though the reason was hidden even from himself. And when they had sailed off, the king himself came to Yerbath and held court, and assembling his peers, Sinistox spake, saying, Lo, this cleric hath written with his own hand accusals against the crown, propounding that dominion resteth not in blood royal, but in the election of heaven. and that the scepter may pass to whomsoever is found most righteous. I hold in my keeping the proof of his treason, a treatise penned by him, which I shall presently bring forth when the proper hour is come. Now it was afterward made known that the so-called proof was none other than the Treatise of Dominion and Grace, a discourse written long years before by Norgonce in his youth, when he was yet but a scholar of theology. In it he debated how far the grace of God overruleth the rule of kings, and how righteousness is the true title to govern. This book had been stolen from the cathedral library by agents of Xenops, who sought its sacred formulas, for it was said that within its leaves lay an enigma touching the light uncreated, whereby spirits might be compelled. Xenops, being the secret counselor of Prince Sinistox, made use of the text in his arts, and when the prince fell from favor with his father, he purposed to twist the words therein to prove that Norgonce plotted his downfall. But the wizard vanished in his far travels, and the book was stored in his inaccessible tower, and guarded by a supernatural creature. Thus Sinistox could promise proof, but had it not in hand. When therefore Norgonce and his company went into the dismal town of Ironport, and managed unto the tower's deep, they sought not gold nor glory only, but that lost record by which the true intent might be made manifest. And this was the reason, though they knew it not, that heaven's hand had drawn them all together. They lost good men in that adventure. Not only did the mercury-mined Thalfin, last of the Nystall wizards, gamble away his life on a spell above his ability, but also Phaethar, the beardless lordling, perished in order to preserve the book after they found it. By his death the treason of Sinistox was later revealed, for the added leaves and false annotations, when held near candles blessed by the church, showed hidden letters that glowed red as blood, and they knew that witchcraft had been wrought upon them. The companions made their way to a hidden entrance of Yearbath, known only by the trusted few. Inside the city, they moved swiftly and silently through the narrow streets, their own hometown, avoiding the main thoroughfares and keeping to the shadows. They reached the Duchess's palace just as the first light of sun began to break over the horizon. Norgonce led them to a secluded entrance, where they were met by a loyal servant who had been forewarned of their arrival. "Come," the servant urged, his voice a hurried whisper. "The magistrate awaits you in the council chamber." "Magistrate?" asked Norgonce. "Am I not to see Her Highness the Duchess as requested?" "Our apologies, but Her Highness is occupied with things requiring her utmost attention." The Bladetongue followed the servant through the winding corridors of the palace, their footsteps echoing softly in the silence. They entered the council chamber, where the magistrate sat on his oaken chair. Norgonce stepped forward, the Eldark book clutched tightly in his hands. "My lord," he said, his voice strong and clear, "we have returned with the evidence that will expose high treachery. These extensive researches recovered from the Tower of Xenops contain the proof." The bureaucrat's lizard-like eyes narrowed as he reached out for the book. Norgonce, however, did not pass it to him. "Grave accusations are writ within this tome," Norgonce said, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. "If this evidence is true, Prince Sinistox has committed the highest of crimes. We must proceed with caution. Prince Sinistox, a man of that greatness and caliber, will never be found guilty of crime. Come, pass to me the tome, so I might judge rightly in this matter on behalf of the king. Untaught paper push, I certainly will not surrender it to anyone but the Duchess. I am a man of the church, and cannot be compelled by such as you. Men have died for it. Benefit of clergy vouchsafes divine interests. You have no jurisdiction over me. At that moment, the doors to the council chamber burst open, and Sinistox strode in, his eyes blazing with fury. He was not in his usual partially burnt armor and frayed dark cape, but instead now silk scarf and vermine mantle, looking as a wealthy lord of the court. "What is this controversy and falsehood arisen?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You dare to accuse me, Norgonce, you, who have always sought to undermine my rightful position?" Norgonce stood ground. Unwavering was his gaze. "The evidence I do possess, my prince," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your own words, recorded in this book. They reveal your demon-inspired designs not as childish fancy or youthful rebellion, but as deeply measured arrangements." Sinistox answered, unperturbed. "So also be found your thoughts heretical within those pages, cleric." The magistrate raised his hand, silencing the room. "We shall examine this evidence carefully," he declared. "The king will summon both of ye to appear alone before him. Whatever proves true, the full weight of the law will be felt." At this, Sinistox laughed. "No righteous men of law will heed the scribblings of a wizard." He turned about and left the chamber. Norgonce departed to ready himself. The Trial of Norgonce before the king and the Prince Sinistox. Now it befell upon a cold morning of Lent tide that Norgonce, priest and counsellor of Ulthor, was brought before the great hall of Ulthor, capital city of the Ulthorings, there to answer the charge of treason laid upon him by Prince Sinistox. The king sat upon his dais, grey-browed and weary, and his advisers gravely beside him, for none would lightly hear such words spoken against the Lord's own servant. Even so, it had been many years since the king had seen his son, Sinistox, and he was happy to have him there restored to court, and saw not any dissemblance in him. Sinistox, chin high and apparelled in black samite, made his accusation, saying, "My lord the king, behold here a man false both to God and to thee. He hath written secret tracts wherein he denieth the right of thine house, affirming that kings hold not their crowns by inheritance, but by favour of heaven, which favour, saith he, may pass from sire to stranger. By such poison are kingdoms undone. And I swear before this company that proof of his treason abideth in a certain volume of his making, now kept for safe witness till the appointed day." At this word there arose much murmuring among the barons, for many loved Norgonce well, and knew him gentle of heart. But the king lifted his hand for silence. "Let the priest answer," said he, "for verily no man shall be condemned unheard." Then Norgonce, clad in his plain habit, stepped forth, bowing low. His face was calm, though the lines thereof were weary, and his voice when he spake was resonant as from a tower bell. "Most dread sovereign, I know of what book this prince speaketh, for in my brazen youth I wrote of the mysteries of grace and dominion. If aught therein offendeth, I crave to amend it, for never did I intend treason nor rebellion, but speculated where I should have been silent. I have served God and thee according to my light. If I have erred, it was through folly, not malice. Yet if my words be twisted, I cannot untwist them, save God himself reveal the truth. So have I here the book of the prince's agency, wherein he quoth my writings, in order to employ them against the throne, which I never meant. And also compiled in this volume are his own musings diabolical, and strategies he used for his wars, and worst of all, the pact he signed with the powers of hell, and with Warkunda Baal Crown, accursed monarch of the ancient dead." Then Sinistox laughed a little, though his eyes were cold. "A grand description, good father, and a glorious imagination. You will find no such writings as of a pact, yet you have broken into a tower mine, which I maintain in a foreign land to store library, and you have stolen that book from me, and intend to make me seem untrue, as you did once before, deceiving the crown and resulting in my dreary exile. So I took up the sword, Elmethodon, and fought against you. But you prevailed, as if God verify your worthiness, whereas the writings of yours which I quoth in that book are your true sentiments." Norgonce made answer, "My king, the writings as of a diabolic pact are indeed within, but writ in a kind of blood invisible, which only spirits can read. This I can show." But Sinistox retorted, "'Tis a stalling and a trickery, father. Doubtless he has employed his own witchery to write a fictional pact with invisible ink," cried Sinistox. And with that he bowed and departed from the hall, his mantle sweeping behind. The king looked long upon Norgonce. "It grieveth me," said he, "that strife should rise between my blood and holy church. Till proof be brought, thou shalt not know favor but unofficial exile, not as criminal but as man of contemplation. Prepare thy soul, and pray that truth be made manifest. For now speak no more. Give thou to me the book, and my ministers will examine it, and the truth will be determined." So was Norgonce prevented from laying out full his case, but in obedience turned over the book to the king. He was led thence to a small oratory adjoining the palace, and there he kneeled before the rood and prayed. The candles burned low, and the dawn light slanted through the narrow window, and it seemed to him, in that stillness, that another voice breathed beside his own, whether angel or inward spirit he knew not, and it said, "You will be brought into the desolate places, but resist not, for there lieth the dragon of universal doom. Overcome it, and thou shalt understand the mysterious purpose of your trials." Then he rose and crossed himself, and the peace of decision came upon him. When the guards returned at noon, they found the chapel empty, save only the warm glow upon the altar, and the priest's rosary laid across the missal. None knew whither he had gone, save that word soon spread he had a company of adventurers who returned victorious from the cursed tower of Xenops by the sea. And the chroniclers wrote afterward, "Thus did heaven hide its purpose beneath the seeming flight of a condemned man, that through peril and blood the truth might be brought again to light." How Bladetongue waited in Yerbath for Norgonce, and the townsfolk made accusal, and of their illegal arrest. During that week the worthy band sought speech with two mercenaries of the bow, Damis and Odohir, if by any means they might bind them to their company for the road to come. For they feared the folk of Yerbath would lay blame upon them for Phaethar, and already had some unworthy knave cried out that they had stolen his golden armor. Were such a claim taken up by many, they would be thrust out of the town. And since they had now some small store of coin, they might hire stout bowmen to ride with them against bandits or whatsoever perils beset them on their quests. As for the two archers, though their craft be commonly counted unworthy, the longbow is a deadly thing, piercing the enemy to death. And the men that draw it must from youth be trained, their shoulders like oak, their arms of iron. These two had smitten the enemy oft through corslet and plate, and so earned their hire. And because the fellowship had spent overmuch in the campaign, not all their wages could be paid, but promises were made of future reward and fair employment. The remnant gold the Bladetongue spent upon medicines and on the costliest of antidotes, for they yet were sore from the venom of the creeping spiders and battle wounds. And when all reckonings were ended, they had but one night only, to live as kings, enjoying the fruits of their quest labors. Even so, they were all in doubts that much was left undone, and they had little help and no battle wizard. That same night, Urius crawled, when he had combed his boar's mane trim, spent all his few silver pieces upon a strange errand, for he hired a town scribe to read a letter that weighed somewhat upon his mind. This letter had been given him when he bore tidings of Thalfin Miravel's demise unto the keepers of the wizard's quarters. The script was of the Magian College of Asadon, penned in signs the barbarian could not ken. In that missive the Magian authority made inquiry touching the cost of bail for one Belderrock, assistant alchemist, who had been cast into ward in Yerbath. No more could Urius learn, though he would fain have sought out this Belderrock in the jail. Yet small avail had been his haste, for ere the ink upon the letter was dry there ran, winged upon the wind went a rumour through all Yerbath, city upon the splashing sea, that certain fools had broken into the accursed tower of Xenops, and wakened devils from their sleep. At dawn the temper of the townsfolk turned, and when Urius heard that tale whispered in every tavern and market stall, he was sorely troubled, for he doubted in his heart that such mischief must needs tie itself to the name writ in that letter. Yet he could not be sure. Thus was the matter left to gnaw upon him like a hidden thorn. On the morrow he sought the jailer's house, but the place was in tumult, for many prisoners had been shifted by warrant of the Duke of Rolgam, some released, others sent forth upon the king's errands. When Urias asked after Belderrock, none could tell him plainly. One turnkey said the man had been taken to the outer cells, another that he had been set free under bond, yet a third swore he had been shipped off to the mines. None agreed, and Urias left the place ill at ease. Where 7 days before the people had cheered the departure of the heroes, now they gathered grimly with pitchforks and summoning authority. 20 men in harness came down the quay and found the Bladetongue still nursing their wounds and weak from hardships, and there they seized them for trespass and contempt of the court. In the same square where once they had been paraded in triumph, now stood a prison wagon, dark and close-boarded, and one by one they were shackled in irons and thrust within. Then came Damis and Odohir, the archers, marvelling at so sudden a reversal, and Urias, frowning, beckoned to them of further instruction, for already he was plotting escape. And they came close to the jail wagon, and he spoke softly from behind bars, urging unto them of new employment. Friends, follow ye our course, and wait the hour. I am no citizen of Yerbath, nor do I bend to her laws, rather a barbarian half-breed, satisfied with shorn locks and savage bearing, kneeling before no man, and not able to be kept long in chains. Follow unseen at distance to where they convey us, in view to help us at the right time. There may yet be treasure for the bold. Gulathar knoweth of stored wealth beyond imagining, and I swear ye shall live as kings if ye trust me. Our band prevailed in the tower, no? So doubt me not. So he whispered, and the 2 archers looked one upon another, and held their counsel. Then, says the chronicle, would God the fellowship had made more friends and fewer enemies, for the people of Yerbath are clement but stern. The elders judged that the men should give proof of their good works, or else depart the realm. Yet the Bladetongue, though they told the tale of their deeds, found no credence, for the citizens said it was more like fanciful tale, whereas, truth be told, they had joined with pirates, thus accounting for their wounds and their glittering coin. Now Norgonce, being a cleric of Holy Church, could not lawfully be imprisoned, and he alone held the word that might have proved their story. But he would not speak further on it, fearing lest the Church order him brought and detained in ecclesiastical court as author of heretical writing, and he fall into the hands of the Inquisition. Better to be held a common criminal. So the lawman bound the others in fetters, and Norgonce went beside the wagon on foot, praying and refusing to forsake his fellows. Shamed and in sorrow, they were carried westward by the Tarnopol road, deep into the wild lands of Ardaheim, which border the kingdom of Cargiwal. For though no piracy could be proved against them, it was counted great mischief to break open a tower in a foreign realm, and so their punishment was exile, which in that age was a sentence near to death. Of the Bladetongue's banishment into Ardaheim of the westward waste. Then Urius crawled, pressed his face against the iron grate of the wagon, and spake unto Norgonce, saying, Where will they forsake us in this withered land, where no leaf clingeth to the bough? Shall we die here, unshriven in the deeps of these desolate wastes? But none answered him, for even Norgonce foreknew not their doom, and the rest moaned softly in their chains. No songs now from the sweet women of Ulthor, they murmured one to another, nor roast nor ale, but only the clank of fetters and the snorting of beasts shall comfort us, if we live to greet another band of doomed men. Nor did they find any comfort when they heard the omen sound of the great packs not distant, the baying of the rim wolves that haunt the misty Whim woods. Then too the shaggy horses shied and labored against the bit, being half mad with cold and fear. The frowning jailer smote them on, and the wagon jolted ever westward through the wrathful gale that sweepeth the marches of Ardaheim, rim of the unforgiving world in the realm of Cargiwall. Thorny and bare stood the trees, black against the snow-lit sky, and the road wound perilously among frost-worn cliffs that leaned above them like disgruntled giants. Here be a land whose bounty of harvest is thistles and dry bison dung. A lucky man might scrape a meal on the marrow of nameless bones. And so being driven forth into the wasteland, in misery, little thought had they then of any fellow prisoners, for the cold bit their flesh, and the iron bit their wrists, and all their care was bent upon escape. But as the wagon rattled on over the stone-strewn paths, Urius marked another convict that had ridden dumb among them, a half-breed man, not a dwarf, but taller, with a hoggish snout and bird-like chin. Over his eyes there were set looking glasses in circular frames, and his gaze gleamed with an uncanny brightness, such as one might see in a scholar poring over forbidden books by candlelight. This man spoke not at first, but watched all with a wary cunning. Many leagues into the waste they went ere the sun sank, and finally the stranger got up and came forth into the light of the wagon's barred roof, and stood before the Bladetongue. And then Norgonce asked him his name, and he answered softly, I am Belderrock, sir, alchemist by training, ne'er-do-well by reputation. At that Urius started, for he remembered the letter and the mystery bound therein. He came close and said in a low voice, Art thou the same Belderrock that the Magians sought to ransom? The little man gave a crooked smile. Aye, barbarian, and had they tarried longer, I should have rotted in that cell. Fortune is a queer mistress. She has cast me out among you instead. But mayhap this adventure becomes a worse change than that cell, when they abandon me to the wilderness, as is often done with thieves. Wherefore I will surely die, being unable by alchemy to summon food or drive off wolves. Then walk you with us, said Urius, and hold the stead of Thalfin Miravel, thy master now departed. But mark me well, when battle is joined, you must strike as we strike, or else wield such arts as lie within your keeping, for no man among us shall be born idle. Belderrock bowed his head, though his eyes flickered with strange contemplations. He returned to his bench and sat. Think not I lack craft, he said softly. My masters taught me well, and then they sent me to keep an eye on Thalfin's laboratory. What trifles he did teach me I have made my own. The elements speak, if a man but learns to hear them." Urius frowned. "It is well, but see that they speak not ruin upon us," he growled. "Your master had great confidence in such things. Aye, too much. It was his undoing. Pride you less on unreliable magicraft. Rather practice the dagger thrust." Belderoch answered nothing, for he had no dagger, as Urius could guess. But the alchemist's fingers traced unseen signs upon his thigh, as if measuring the powers about him. Thus was Belderoch introduced to their company, not by oath, nor by proving of arms, but by the weaving of circumstance. And some mistrusted him, especially Urius, who soon would rue his invitation, as barbarians trust not magic. The night of Cargiwal's wastes. The rain slackened, leaving only wheels groaning and the wind like a dying flute. Belderoch lifted his head at last from his cloak and spoke into the dim lantern glow. "Think you wolves and common cut-purses our sole concern? The road to Cargiwal is older and hungrier than that." Urius grunted, unimpressed. "Name your fears, then, alchemist. Give them shape, or hold your tongue." So Belderoch inhaled, but instead recited silently his studies like one remembering a childhood warning. Now the sheriff, Rollo, rode 4 on his destrier, and the Lord of Rolgam, a dark-browed man of slight mercy, drave on the jail wagon. He was a magistrate who knew all the turns of civil law and could utter doom with calm voice. The wagon halted a sudden. The prisoners sat in the gloom, hearing the jangle of keys. Presently the rear gate creaked open. With his iron key, Rolgam twisted open the locket and pulled the chain through the sockets so that they were all left unfastened at once, and the guards beside him with halberd. He bade the prisoners step forth. Glad were they to stretch their limbs, though the wind was not kind. The guards drove them aside, together with Belderoch, small and ill-favored, with a hoggish snout and bird-like chin. Yet his eyes were keen with intellect, for he had studied in the mage school of alchemical transmuting that stands outside the church's law. For some petty theft he was condemned under the new power, but his manner and his schooling made him doubly suspect, so that the law, finding no grace in him, smote him with its whole weight. The horses halted, steaming in the frost. They had come unto the middle plain of Ardaheim, a desolate destination, a place forlorn. The Lord of Rolgam locked himself in the wagon, as was his custom lest any criminal assail him, for he now declared aloud their crime, and full sentence of exile from his ledger. He peered grimly at them through his thickly bearded face, frowning under the broad-rimmed hat. They refreshed the horse for the long pull home. When he had ended the reading, he spake thus unto the fellowship: "If ever ye return to Yerbath, it shall be your death. Seek you some other haven, if the wolves spare you. Remember this, ye reckless adventurers, seeking gold in wizard towers is a losing sport. Virtuous though ye deem yourselves, the law knows no favorites. All the city is in doubt of what became of Phaethar, the valiant youth from one of our noble families." If you had a hand in his demise, may you meet a bitter end. Although stern by dint of office, yet I be not with mercy all out. Your weapons shall be cast down to you, though I wager they shall avail little in this land of storms, save against strong predators. Keep you to the high paths, and avoid the moors where great dangers lurk. Having said this, he drew about him his bison-hide cloak, and the guards made ready to depart. The heavy wagon groaned and rolled away, fading into the grey mist. After a space, they saw it halt again upon a far rise, and the sheriff cast down a heap of their arms and gear, clanging onto the ground. Running unto these, the Bladetongue retrieved them, and the wagon diminished on the horizon, and soon was out of sight. So were the Bladetongue thrust into the wide waste, where could be seen nothing of any sort comforting. With them all around lay a vast, wind-swept landscape. Ardaheim, of ceaseless flying dust and bitter drought. No towns nor taverns stood upon its roads, but only outcroppings of massive and barren rock. Long brown clouds moved slow, ever blotting out the sun, moon, and the stars. Storms sent men and even beasts to seek shelter under the ledges or malformed trees. With few provisions and little store of bread, and having no chart to guide them, they turned at last on a southward path, seeking any region less cruel. Soon they were fearing that they would indeed perish, for they had no tents, and slept under bushes and within fallen timbers. Dimly veiled evening of the third day came, and colder winds blew. Clouds fraught with fire-bolts sailed like a fleet of black marauder ships across the heavens, refusing to bless the land with rain, but just went thundering away. That night the fellowship made a fire of thorns and driftweed, and huddled close together. Rohorst had constructed a shelter of branches and pine leaves, laying some out on the ground to keep the men from losing warmth to the cold earth. This was taught to him when he once explored the cold mountains of his own sunburnt home. The wind blew cruel from the north, and the plain of Ardaheim lay pitch black, 'neath an occulted moon, and the breath of men rose ghostly in the chill air. None spake, till at length Norgonce, who sat somewhat apart, lifted his shadowed face from his hands, and began to speak, low but clear. "Behold, my brethren," said he, "how unjustly the righteous are afflicted, and how lightly the wicked go free. We are thrust out not for theft nor treason, but for zeal and truth. Yet they that slay and rob sit high in their halls and feast. Such is the order of this iron world, wherein mercy hath grown faint and justice blind of both eyes. The innocent go chained, while the guilty ride in chariots of silver. Many cities have been overturned, not for sin, but for envy, and entire nations were destroyed, for a prince would not yield his pride. The upright are slain in the courts, and the slanderer is crowned with garlands. What wonder that the angels hide their faces from the earth? The annals tell there was once a vain queen of this Cargiwall," he said, and his voice darkened, "who in the last hour of her life commanded. When her time drew close, she requested that her own physicians be slain following her. For as her beauty failed, and her breath grew faint, she said unto her king, Let them die that could not save me. The priests and the physicians, after I am gone, put them to death, my husband, that the people may hear weeping, and suppose it is I who am mourned, that it is I who am beloved. And the king obeyed this unjust request, himself weeping also, yet not for her, but for his folly. Thus the realm rang with lamentation for her. How can such a land be blessed? Verily, I tell you, the world is upside down turned. The proud build glorious towers unto heaven, and the humble forage for bones in the dust. The cunning prosper, and the just man is hunted like a beast. All is vanity. Yet the Lord, though he tarry, forgetteth not. His justice walketh slowly, like the sun waiting the storm, but it cometh sure. Therefore let us not despair. Indeed, the winds here are harsh, and this wilderness may indeed be the end of us. Yea, death must needs come, and cannot be scaped. But remember Phaethar, and how he died. For it be not if a man will die, but how a man lives and dies that perfects him. Not every exile may expect his home in heaven, but the wilderness may yet blossom where the scaffold stood. Though we be despised of men, let us remember this, that the measure of a realm is not its wealth, but the service it giveth. Be assured and take heart, for the voice of the Holy One fell into my dreaming some nights ago, and assured me that this wilderness is part of his plan, far greater than we can learn by mortal skein. The high shall be made low, and the lowly lifted up. I say unto you, truly the world is a broken wheel, turning in pain until the hand of the Maker mend it, or else unmake it. When he had spoken thus, silence fell among them. Even Urias bowed his wild head, and Rohorst crossed his breast. The fire sank to embers, and the night wind went howling over the barren rocks. Then said Peri Lothran softly, Would that the angels have pricked the judges of Yerbath to such thoughts ere they thrust us out. But as you say, there be a greater design, and faith ye on it. The coming of the Duke. They had drawn close about their mean fire, feeding it with what thorn roots and drifted hortweed they could gather, for the cold sank deep into their bones. The desert wind hissed along the rust dunes, like the breath of spirits wandering. Then suddenly, above the soft moan of a distant gale, there was heard the thundering of horses in full gallop, and nigh was it coming unto them. Urias sprang to his feet and grabbed a spear. "Ho there! What riders go there?" he cried into the blackness. "Announce yourself, or by heaven we Moraders will have supper yet this night." A voice came back, rough but noble. "Peace, warrior. It is the Duke, thy former ward. Lay down your arms. I come not with fetters nor with rope, but with aid from the King of Ulthor." Urias frowned, his hands still tight on the spear shaft. "Go back to thy wagon, jailer. We have no more business with you. Or if you offer some word of requital, then approach. But be assured of our war prowess, if blades you hide. We have not forgotten your part in our thrust into exile." Then out of the mist rode the Duke, muffled in his great cloak, and behind him came 2 couriers bearing packs upon their shoulders. Their torches flared red in the dusty and dark air. How found ye us in so wild a place? Cried Rohorst, amazed. Was it the sorcery of Sinistox? The Duke shook his head gravely. Nay, brave men, no spell led me hither. As I turned homeward, I was overtaken by these messengers, who came straight from the king himself. The king is troubled in conscience concerning you, and his heart warreth with doubt. He knoweth not whether ye be traitors or wronged men, but he hath heard whisper that ye entered the tower of Zinops not for gain, but for truth. Still, he may not by Ulthuringa law admit ye back. Therefore he hath sent me with these supplies, that at least ye may perish not in the desolate places, ere God declare your cause. The couriers came forward, and cast down their bundles, tents of stout hide, loaves bound in linen, and thick bison coats. These, said the Duke, are gifts of the King of Ulthor, who would see justice tempered with mercy. Yet he cannot pardon ye outright until heaven show a sign. If ye endure the wastes of Cargiwall and live to return, he shall know that God favoureth your cause. Till then, he beg your prayers for him, for his heart is heavy concerning his son. The Bladetongue stood silent, beholding the bounty. The firelight gleamed upon their hollow cheeks and worn mail. At last Norgonce came forward, and bowing low said, Tell the king that we receive his mercy as from the hand of the Almighty. We shall pray for him without ceasing, that truth may be restored to his house and the shadow of deceit lifted from his heart, hard though it be to reckon that his own blood plot against him. So say I, added Urius, softening a little, and may the king's justice yet reach those who work wickedly in his name. The Duke inclined his head. That is all, quoth he. May your God be with you, for no man else may be. Then he turned about his horse, and was gone into the swirling mist, the hoofbeats fading far away. And the fellowship, warmed by the king's gifts and the strange mercy of the night, made camp anew beneath the flickering stars, half believing they had seen angels and not men. No bright sun shining will rise upon us, said Urius. So have us not sleep over long, not until we had made it off the plains and could hunt. So it befell that, when the grey dawn widened over the wastes, they rose from their uneasy slumber, and laboured onwards through wind and wailing waste. The land lay dead and empty, a desolation of dee and dust. Lightning flickered afar off, and the air smelled of iron and storm. They spoke to one another of Yerbath and the Golden Mermaid, and of the dark brew they would drink when all their travails were ended. A storm was approaching, and the lightning of the sky flickered on the horizon. Rohorst alone was silent, stooping ever and scanning the trail with his hunter's eyes. At length he raised his hand. Stay, ye brothers, said Rohorst. There are eyes upon us in this place. The wind brings me their scent, large predators and many. Hold ye ready and aware. And even as he spake, there came a deep baying upon the gale, and through the mist were seen great shadows darting about. Then Rohorst called aloud, Arm ye selves, men! These be the dire wolves of Ardaheim, called wargs by the northern tribes, dread creatures, fearing neither man nor steel. They are the bane of travelers and the scourge of the bison herds. And now they mistake our scent. Tall as a man they are at shoulder. Stand fast. Now they have scented us and hear, and do feverously encircle. Then the pack broke from the fog, 12 and more, vast as horses, their eyes like burning glass. The fellowship formed their ring, swords flashed, and the storm's breath roared among them. Immediately the heroes went into unchecked combat. First whom the wolves took was Gulathar, the Valraff, oldest and wisest among them, now embracing sad defeat. Before ever he lifted his trusty axe, one grey mane's brute sprang out of the fog upon him and seized him in its jaws. As a nimble hound catches a rabbit, which they shake apart under their teeth, so the wolf rent asunder Gulathar. In his death agony he made no cry, no sad groan as his lifeblood trickled on to the dull earth. The several wolves reformed like soldiers, making a line of assault and approaching them, their pointy ears twitching, their tails steady, dark heads lowered, their eyes gleaming, their tongue wagging out. Urius calls to Belderoch. Now is the time to prove your craft to us, wizard. Hurl your blazing fire upon them and drive them off. Belderoch spake low. Not fire, good Urius. Behold, there is an oily gleam upon their hackles, as though some resin or unclean vapor clings to their fur, for they must have rolled about in an oil spot to disguise their scent. If I cast flame, the whole dead wood shall burn like dry hemp in this wind, and ourselves withal. But Urius answered him roughly, and pressed a dagger into his hand. Then steel must serve thee. Take this, and thrust it sternly into the beast when it comes upon thee. So Belderoch goes forth, striving to show a stout heart, yet his hand shakes, and the stroke is wide, unbalancing him. In his stumbling, he falls full into Peri's back, and the halfling in turn goes headlong to the earth. In that unhappy mischance, a great wolf breaks through the line and leaps upon Peri Lothran, seizing him as a hawk would snatch a field mouse. Pitiful it was to see. The poor halfling was lifted screaming, then down he goes, swallowed whole, his cries lost in the living tomb of that vit and monstrous throat. They had taken the hazard of quest, knowing well that survival should not be expected. None could come to his aid, for each was straightway set upon by fang and claw, and every helm rang beneath the battering of those flesh-shearing jaws. The whirling and stormy wind is like a fiend come up from the rear, making it difficult to manage a fight, with dust and sand so that they scarce could see. Yet the greatest wolf came on again, circling, bloodied but unafraid. They were sorely injured by those shearing fangs. All was tumult. Urius smote one wolf through the ribs, and Cudget broke another's skull with his war hammer. Then rose a whirling storm wind behind them, as though some fiend of the waste had crept up at their backs. Dust and burning sand went flying, so that scarce could they see friend from foe. There was tumult without number. Urius smote one wolf through the ribs, so that it tumbled dying at his feet. Cudget shattered another's skull with the iron of his war hammer, and the ringing of that blow was like a smith's stroke upon the anvil of war. But now the mightiest wolf, a hulking brute, huge as any bull of Neruz, having taken full measure of sword and spear, gave back a little space. He circled with the remnant of his pack, gathering for a second onset. Yet ere they closed, there came on a sudden a roar as of the very heavens rending. and a wind of such force burst down the line that men and beasts alike were scattered and cast upon the darkling earth. And lo, a mighty whirlwind formed, spinning and rending the dead trees, hurling them into the air. It swept toward the northwest, less than an arrow's flight away, with a sound as of 10,000 wings. Kajet spots an overhang of shallow hills close by, and points it out to Norgonce. Just as when the shepherd calls his sheep into a safe hold for protection, delivering them from being torn by the beasts that hunt those lost in the gale's confusion, so did Norgonce call his companions climb into a cliff's overhang for harbor. When the vortex at last subsides, the heroes muster and recover their wits, setting up a makeshift camp. They lament Gulathar and Peri. "Let us feed off the uncooked remains of the bison meat," said Urius, when they returned to the place of battle. "And the wolves whom Rohorst slew with his bow. The fur we will take. The remaining wolves must have fled far off, far away to the pathless lands with more water. But what is this? The wolf's belly is huge." "Then open it and see what you find," said Rohorst. "Mayhap things left there, little treasure of those who had been their former meals, some remnants from those whom they had previously devoured." "Behold," added Kajet, cutting open one, "how the worms of the world feed upon even the mighty. These wolves recently went and dug the graves of ancient soldiers for their supper. Here is even an old Regulian legionnaire's helm in its belly. The ravenous creatures, when they get mortally hungry for bones, must dig up the graves of men from the past and swallow indiscriminately anything they find." While some of the companions gathered up the poor remnants of Gulathar in sorrow, Belderoch, the elfish alchemist, drew forth a little quire of vellum from his pouch and began tracing uncouth signs with his stylus, bending low over one of the slain wolves as though he sought some hidden lore within its shattered skull. Urius watched the mage's hands delve into the steaming gore, shaping runes upon the air with every motion. His heart stirred with the same dread he had long felt watching Thalfin work his art. Dread of fires men were not meant to touch. Urius regarded him hard and said at last, "Thy courage was not lacking in the press, Belderoch. However, your inability at combat cost us dearly. Better that you be quick enough with craft and master its practice. Tell me then, what mean these strange markings? With what lore wouldst thou take counsel from the brains of wolves?" Belderoch looked up, his spectacles gleaming in the wan light. "These brains hold patterns," Belderoch said, his voice trembling, not with fear, but wonder. "The heavens are writ in all flesh, the very geometry of creation." "Nay, Urius, think not I pry after auguries. All living things bear the imprint of the heavens, even beasts of waste and winter. The wolf is a creature most mystical. Its nose holdeth dust of the high airs, and its eyes the lunar ray, and in its brain are traced the faint tracings of comets. There lieth power in nature, if a man will read it rightly. Rare is the hour when one may study such a great beast so closely. And though our Thalfin erred, seeking to mend a rift of the firmament without reckoning the ecliptic, I may yet redeem our art somewhat by this service. You trust those things and do not even hold such powers suspect. Thalfin also sought such knowledge, but he reached too far, too swiftly. I will not. I take only what the world yields willingly." Urius spat upon the stone. The trees and stones and beasts hardly yield such secrets willingly, mage. The world exacts a price." The barbarian walked away, shaking his head. He went to Norgonce, and turning aside with a scowl, whispered low, "Captain, why hold we company with such a half-trained meddler? The man stumbled in battle and cost us a good scout, and now he toys with secrets better left untouched. How shall the Lord God grant us victory if we walk beside one who would peer into creation's inward workings, perchance calling forth powers he cannot master?" Then Norgonce answered him gently but with weight. "Urius, it were you that invited him. Therefore trouble not thy soul, nor set thy mind adrift with such misgivings. For only sorcerers and enchanters hold fellowship with unholy spirits. This man is no summoner of devils, nor trafficker in forbidden craft, that foul corruption whereby Nystol was consumed with flame. If he erreth, it is through eagerness, not malice. What befell to Thalfin was grievous turn, and less fault of his than seems. And certainly the Lord God may turn even a frail tool to good service, if the heart be set aright. Judge him by his deeds hereafter, not by this hour's mischance." To Norgonce's reassurance, Urius took some issue. "Yet he has learned the ill methods of Thalfin, or else the spirit of that wrecked lord. He should, I fear, put us all at risk. Nay, I spoke with him on't. He was bred in an elder school that held in reverence the mysteries of God's creation. Thy words are not without wisdom, yet it beseems us not to condemn a man for the skill he has in the workings of nature. The wise men of Azadon, that ancient seat of learning which stood long ere Nystol was, is risen anew from long forgetfulness. Wherefore may we not judge Beldarok by the craft he hath learned, but rather by the certainty of his works." Then they buried Gulathar after the olden rite of his folk, raising over him a heap of chill stones, that the winds of Ardaheim might sing his requiem. Great sadness came to Karjet the warrior, his old companion, for Gulathar had trained him from youth. The rites and readings had been long prepared by the Valrath himself, a doom that none had deemed so near at hand, and they set a large stone above him, the third of the Oathfold, to yield his life unto glory. "I fear and dread the passing of this great one from the earth, Norgonce," said Karjet, that was ever a man spare of speech. "It is as if with him the old world of the gods and its simple charm has at last clean departed. Of these turns as of late, 'tis an evil token for the fellowship of Bladetongue, for none knew so well the hidden ways beneath the earth, nor taught more cunningly the craft of wandering through waste and cavern. His experience and wisdom forfeit puts us at great risk, for the sword alone cannot suffice unto our survival." "I will not pretend with you, or any of you," replied Norgonce. "Truly the passing of Gulathar, gentle sage, bodes not well for our company. Was he not the one who drew us together from the start? And oft would he beckon me apart, and give counsel passing wise, explaining perils, and keeping to the charts precisely. He was our pilot through dark places, and now are we astray, save only by grace of heaven. Therefore let us commit our way to God, beseeching heaven that angels be our navigators. Farewell, old Gulathar, elf ears. May you go quickly to your reward." That night the fellowship kept their vigil beside the cairn. The storm had moved eastward, but its ghost still murmured among the rocks, and the stars glimmered faintly as through a veil, and soon all the night sky became fair, an otherwise rare reprieve in that region. They dared not kindle great fire, for the wolves still haunted the plain, yet a small flame guttered in a hollow, and about it they sat in silence. Norgonce knelt long in prayer, murmuring the psalms of the departed. Urius crouched apart, sharpening his blade as one that could not sleep. Rohorst, patient hunter, kept watch upon the dark, his keen eyes glinting now and again, like a bestial in the glow. Then, toward the 3rd hour of night, when even the wind had fallen, they beheld a strange marvel. A light arose in the north, soft and wavering like the wings of angels, or like a curtain concealing the sanctuary. It spread along the sky, green and silver, until the whole vault of heaven shone with silent motion. The starlight upon the stones kindled faintly. The cairn of Gulathar seemed touched with celestial fire from within. "See," whispered Kajet, bowing his head, "the very heavens have come to honor him." Norgonce lifted his face, the radiance reflected in his eyes. "Yea," said he, "this is no fire of the earth. The Lord hath received him. His spirit goeth now to the far shores of which he sang. These be his triumphal procession come to guide him home." No man spake after that. Only the crackle of the dying fire was heard, and the slow, hollow breathing of the plain. Then the light faded, sinking behind northern mountains, and all the sky grew dark again as murky clouds came on. Yet they were comforted, and their courage renewed, for they knew that Gulathar was not forsaken, but had passed beyond to a realm unharried by storm or sorrow. So they lay down at last, and their dreams were peaceful. And when dawn came pale upon the horizon, they rose and took once more the road toward the east, where the sea and their destiny awaited. As for the halfling Peri Lothran, he was now buried in a living tomb. The wolf belly and the disgorged beast had slipped away. Yet for vengeance' sake, Urius set up a black stone upon that dismal plain, for token of wrath and remembrance. "His voice be heard no more in tale nor song," said Urius. "Yet I found his little book, which he gave me ere he lost all hope of life. Though I be no mind that can read it, yet shall I find one that can, for herein is writ the very tale of our travail." So they departed from that place of sorrow, leaving them both in Cargiwall within the waste of Ardaheim. And Kayet, turning once, said softly, "At the Golden Mermaid I shall meet ye again, by God's grace." They went onward. After long foot travel with little sustenance, it being vain for men to hunt in that barren realm, they made it through the desolate marches of Cargiwall. The rusty dust clung to their faces and beards. "My strength be wasted, aye, as the land about us," said Urius. "The plains here were once green, but now so withered to stony heaths and low thorn bushes of fray, unknown beasts wail from afar, or not so far. No doubt they have taken larger prey than us, and are more vigorous. Exiled and bereft of welfare, the Bladetongue wander many days in that wilderness. Their limbs become weary, and their will was nigh broken. Rohorst, the keen-eyed hunter of the Mahanaxaran race, went ahead of them, his senses sharp as hawk's sight. After him strode Norgonce, bearing the bulk of supply upon his back. Behind followed Urias, Kayet, and Belderoch in silence, and Urias at the rear guard. After a morning's long hike, they heard Rohorst. "Brothers, look there! Below in the riverbed, some lordly company hath set a camp, tents about a fire pit, a shelter against the dry river. What man of reason would take such a place for home from these cruel wastes? Nay, they must be travelers." Norgonce answered, "Aye, right you deem it. Cautiously we go, for who would dwell in such desolation? It may be some outlawed hand, murderous bandits, or soul accursed that hates all mankind. Let us therefore go softly, with wary steps and open eyes." They descended, approaching the oxhide tents. A figure, clad in magisterial robes all dusted and torn, emerges. His beard was unkempt, and hair wild and uncombed, yet a noble bearing marked his form. His motion was slow and watchful. "Who goeth there?" cried he. "Name yourselves, or I shall take ye for man-eaters, wretches, ye lurking about these wolds, craving human flesh. 2 cannibals already this day have I dispatched to the hells. Would ye have me score thrice?" Then spake Norgonce, "Nay, friend, but 'tis I, Norgonce, the knight-errant, and these my sworn fellows, called as a fighting band the Bladetongue. From Yerbath we are cast forth, wrongfully accused, and wander here seeking rest and truth." At that the rough man started and cried, "Norgonce, by our Lord's mercy you live! I deemed you perished in devilish snares and bewitched treasure, and honestly railed that you were raced off. Alas, that you should learn what mischief is fallen upon our realm. I am Rollo, Sheriff of Yerbath." "Good Sheriff," he replied, "though you fulfilled your office upon us, be not afeard. Your mercy, in leaving us our arms, has preserved you from any wrath of ours. But tell me, why tarry you in this desolate waste?" "Sir Knight," said Rollo, "I shall tell you, though it will grieve your heart. When I neared the turn of Skillings on my road homeward, from my horse I beheld a lady and 1 man-at-arms travelling afoot toward our way. Strange sight indeed, for folk of rank go never thus. When we came up to them, we knew them, yea, the Duchess herself and her Secretary of Arms. Then learned we the truth dire. Yerbath is taken by an enemy." The court, beholding the foe's dread power, urged the Duchess to flee by the secret way. She consented, saying she must but gather her gear, and would hurry forth at the outer wall. Yet courage mastered caution, for she, with a few lords steadfast, turned back to the hall, there to face the invader. All ours were slain in that fierce fray, save she alone. For though she fought bravely and sent down several rebel knights to the grave with arrows, yet her arm was not strong enough at sword-play. Acceptance of her own frailty saved her, counselling her to flee, and the enemy allowed it. Now she abideth here with me and one other to guard her. Too small a number, till God sent you hither, who though judged guilty, I know for men loyal and true. These tidings are full heavy, said Norgonce. Lead us to her quickly, that we may comfort her in her distress. The sheriff brought them round a boulder, where her pavilion stood hidden. He called aloud, and they were bidden enter. How now, my brethren, said Norgonce softly. Kneel ye down, for behold, it is our Duchess, the right hand of the king. Lady, how art thou come to this wild place without thy knights? Thy countenance is less glad, and well may it be, for some grievous thing hath befallen Yerbath. Speak, dear lady, what calamity hath cast thee from thy diadem and thy courtly train?